Hello and welcome to the Untranslatable Podcast. Today we are here recording episodes 86, our travel fears, and I will also be discussing how to overcome some of our travel fears. So this episode is perfect for you if you are thinking of that new travel destination. You just have that feeling inside you that might be holding you back. Oh, what if I get something stolen? Or, oh, I don't know if I have enough money, or is it really worth the 8-hour plane trip all the way over there? Or, man, I've never traveled somewhere solo before. I'm not sure if I can handle all that pressure, being there by myself, having to make all of the decisions and talking to all these random people. So we are here today to help you hopefully overcome some of your travel fears and bring some light to some of ours as well. So hopefully all of you will feel happy and ready to travel after this episode, and we are looking forward to it. So without further ado, my good buddy Jared, my travel companion Jared. What's going on, Jared?
Hey there. Sounds like you have a straight line to everything that runs through my brain, essentially on a daily basis. Oh, man. But please, everyone,
Spread a little love.
follow us on Instagram, Untranslatable Podcast, Twitter, Untranslatable1, the number 1. For example, today I posted our episode. Well, this is breaking the fourth wall. Today I posted our episode 85 about body language, and I also reposted the hilarious picture of a video of George W. Bush dodging shoes.
Yes, sir.
Or you could email us, untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com, slide into all of those DMs and email inboxes and give us topic ideas, your untranslatables. Tell us about some travel fears you have, whether you've overcome them or not. I haven't overcome some of mine. Some of mine I think I have. Or, you could tell us you love us on iTunes and Stitcher and give us 5-star reviews.
Пожалуйста.
That would be great. I want to start off by giving some props to you. So I had piano lessons yesterday, and I was talking. First of all, I gave my piano teacher a picture of Joanna, and I framed it for her, and I gave her, with the CD that Joanna gave me to give my piano teacher, I gave her a picture of her, and she loves it. Mm-hmm. Right. Yesterday, she was telling me how every time people are at her house, she can't help but bring it up and talk about it.
That's awesome. That's great.
And then the piano lessons last week, she's not even kidding, by the way. I 100% believe her. Piano lessons last week, she had a student come in right after me, and she's like, Dahlia, she's in her 70s, that's why her name's Dahlia. Right. She's like, Dahlia, this is Jared. And she's like, oh, you're Jared.
Oh,
and I was like,
yes.
And she's like, I've heard so much about you. And I was like, oh, okay, nice to meet you.
That's great.
It's nice, feels nice, also makes me feel a little uncomfortable. But I brought this up to say that so we were talking about something yesterday. Oh, we were talking about the connection between learning a language and learning an instrument, because I talked about how you and I talk about that. Much like she always talks about me, you always somehow manage to come up in my piano lessons.
I'm okay with that.
It came to the point where I was like, damn it, I guess I should probably mention, in my head this was happening, I was like, damn it, I should probably mention jam track number 4, because I happen to have it on my phone. And so I brought it up to her, and I played it for her. And she was like, oh, this is you playing? I was like, yeah. And
nice.
And she thought it was great. Obviously, I told her that you laid down the guitar and drum part. And I told her that you gave me some critiques. And she's like, what kind of critiques did he give? And I said, well, he said that at the beginning I should establish the melody quicker because I do that little short bit. And then I should also play around more with inversions. And also I should play around more with sequencing up and down and repeating, coming back to similar melody. She's like, yeah, I agree with all of that. Those are all great points.
Yes.
That's exactly what I would have said too. And yeah, she essentially wanted me to say that, she wanted me to tell you that you did a great job and that she agrees with all of your critiques.
That's awesome.
And to keep challenging me. So
sweet. I love your piano teacher already, and I've never met her before. That's great.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Though, she is 100% right, though. I think there are so many connections with learning a language and learning an instrument. And that might be fun to explore on a podcast episode too in the near future.
Yeah.
We've been having ideas come out the wazoo the last few days.
I know.
So for all of our
it's crazy.
listeners out there, we'll be having some really interesting stuff coming your way in the near future for sure. But yeah, that's great, man. So did you like actually play anything on the piano related to, I love how we're calling it jam track number 4.
No, I didn't. Although I have to assume that one of the assignments she gave me had something to do with what I played for her, because there was one of the things, part of what I'm learning is what is it called when, is it block chording? Where they don't actually write the bass chord or like the chord, they just write like, 1, 4 or 5, 7 at the top or whatever. I'm working on reading that, and so there was one sort of, I have like a lesson book kind of thing, and there was one where they gave me simple sort of block chords where it's like 1, 4, 5, 7, 1, and it's simple.
Right.
And she said, all right, now,
There's your
do
blues
that.
progression right there.
Yep. She said, do that, but then after you've got that, because you should get that pretty quickly, improvise and make your own using their block chords. Make your own melody out of it. And so I feel like she only wrote that down because I had like 10 minutes beforehand just played her jam track number 4.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm getting challenged both ways.
That's great. And hey, that's a really important thing in life and travel, everything. You gotta be challenged, gotta get out of your comfort zone. And I remember, not to put you on blast on the podcast, Jared, but I remember suggesting the idea of us jamming, and I could tell you were a little uncomfortable with the idea. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
But I think you did great, and you took it in stride, and I think you should be really proud of it. I'm not trying to toot your own horn too much, but you should be.
It just seems like I struggle to get past like what I consider to be rudimentary melodies. But I feel like no matter what I do, like I also kind of have the mindset that's also always telling me that like it's not that good, and also because you learned how to essentially jam before you even learned how to read music properly.
Yep. 100%.
So you're like it's way more natural for you, and you're used to jamming with people that are on your level, and I'm nowhere close to your level, and so it is a little intimidating.
But
to play something that I know is not like you could do much better, and I'm like, what do you think of my quarter notes?
Oh my God, that's great. That needs to be a drop right there. What do you think of my quarter notes? Oh, that's too funny. That's like the SpongeBob episode where he's like, but I'm a good noodle. I'm a good noodle. That's what that reminded me of. I don't think, but see, here's the thing about jamming. I don't think it has anything to do with level, because the first people that I jammed with were, this is going to sound really weird, I guess, but like old dudes who were usually like my friends' dads who were killer guitar players and could play all sorts of crazy stuff. And that's how I learned a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, some of the first fingerstyle guitar playing I learned was from a couple of my friends' dads who were fantastic guitar players. And my neighbor at my parents' house, he had this old classical guitar, and I remember walking around outside and I could hear somebody playing guitar and singing. I'm like, where the hell is this coming from? And, he'd be like kind of out in their backyard where they have like this really nice tree and a bench there. And we would play a little bit, and he just knew song after song after song. It was unreal. And that's the other thing. I've been doing a lot of music theory stuff lately. I found a couple really cool guitar podcasts I've been listening to, and one of them's called I think just Guitar Theory is what it's called. And this guy just keeps mentioning that you can learn all the theory in the world, but if you don't have songs or write your own music to apply it to, it's irrelevant. And that's kind of like how if you learn a language, if all you do is sit there and read books or do grammar drills or something, you're never going to be able to actually really put it together.
Right. Yeah, there's another connection right there. Yeah.
See? There's tons of them, tons and tons of them.
Yeah, and I'm definitely trying to not only to be a better improviser, but just when I play in front of people in general, like I get that anxiety, and even in front of my piano teacher sometimes, where especially where it's like I had all week to prepare the stuff that the stuff that she gave me or whatever, and then I don't want to come back and mess it up and make her think that like, what was he doing all week, or like did he even practice?
Right.
And she always tries to remind me. She's like, sorry. She's like, you're the. She's like, I'm the like the last person that you should be uncomfortable to play around. Like,
Right.
This is what you're here for. Is for this. And
Exactly.
I get that. It's just I feel like I'm wasting everyone's time if I come to the lesson and I'm just messing up.
Right. But see, you're the type of student I would rather have. I would rather have a student that cares about it. You know, I can tell you care about it, and that's why you get a little anxious. And the other thing, like you mentioned earlier too, I wanted to bring this back, was that you said, when you improvise or when you write something, you think, well, it's not that great. I would rather have a student that was learning and thought it wasn't that great than a student that had such a big ego and thought they were like the shit. Because, I've had students before that are like that. And actually, this wasn't even a guitar student of mine, but I was playing table tennis with my niece last summer before I left for the Czech Republic. And she said, Uncle Chad, what would you rate my table tennis skills at? And, she's actually been learning and she's getting pretty good. But she's an only child, kind of like how I was. And only children tend to get a little over-encouraged, over-pampered by their parents sometimes. I was lucky with my dad. He only gave me compliments really when I 100% earned them. My mom, on the other hand, probably was much more nice and encouraging about things. Not that my dad wasn't nice, but
that.
Right. But anyways, and I saw my niece slowly getting into ego land, and I needed to kind of bring her down a little bit. She was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate my playing? And I was like, well, Kennedy, you're learning and you're improving, but right now I'd give you a 6 or a 7. And she was kind of offended by it. And then I explained to her, I said, look, when we play, if I, hit a shot to your backhand, you can't return it. Or if you do, you pop it up, and if I was actually playing you seriously, I would smash that ping pong ball right into the table and it'd be game over.
That would be hilarious to watch.
I'm not one of those crazy uncles like that. But, I love my niece, and I just want her to enjoy the game and improve. But I think if you have like this convoluted idea of yourself as a musician or a language learner or whatever, sometimes somebody has to bring you back to earth a little bit,
Yeah, I have a cousin. He's like 6 years younger than me, and they used to live in, or they still do. They lived in Texas, and I used to go there every summer when I was younger, and I'd hang out with him and stuff. And we would play. He's a big sports person, and so we would play basketball and soccer and stuff together. And I'm 6 years older than them. I don't have to be that good to beat him at all those things.
Right,
And
sure.
he would get so frustrated. And there was one time we were playing basketball, and and I was beating him because I'm better than him. And he started like pushing me around and like hitting me. And so your boy got a little hard on him.
Yes.
And then he went crying to his mom. And his mom like stood up for him, and I was like he needs to be humbled, like he can't handle. Like, it's not like I was killing him out there. Like, I'm not, like, it's not Kobe versus my grandma out there or something. Right. I'm not that good.
Right.
And I was like, he needs to be humbled. I was like,
right.
I don't know if I said it like that, but I did kind of say something like that. I was like, he's getting too aggressive just because he's not winning. And I was like, I was like, he can't live like this.
Right. And you know what? Look, it's good to be competitive and want to win, but the reality is you're never going to win all the time.
Right.
That's not how life works. So yeah.
Right. And he's always been very good in comparison to like his classmates as far as sports go, but he's an only child. So he doesn't have any older siblings to humble him, and that's where I come in.
Right. And see, I was lucky. I got a lot of humbling from my dad,
Yeah, I could
we would play
imagine.
sports, especially table tennis,
Right.
I mean, I think collectively, I would guess I've played him over 1,000 times within my life. I've beaten him 3 times. 3 times.
Man.
And all 3 were really lucky, like beat him by 2 points at the end of the game kind of thing.
Right.
Never like a, and even now, I think even though, he's getting older, so he's slowing down a little bit, I still think he has so many tricks up his sleeve. It's going to be at least another 8-9 years before I can probably really actually beat him.
You have to wait till he's like bedridden.
Right? And
it's still a close match.
Up and he's still playing, still just whipping me.
Yeah, I got humbled a lot, especially in sports by my sister, because she is 4 years older than me, which is the perfect gap to where, like, by the time I can actually start beating her and stuff, she's like graduating high school. And I'm like starting high school. And it's like, oh, it's too late now.
Right.
Now I'm on my own.
Right.
So, yeah,
it's good. It's good to have that humbling, And I think today, talking about some of our travel fears, I think being humbled is also definitely a part of that. But before we get to that, Jared, I think it's time that we
spread a little love. I'm with you.
That's right. So
go ahead.
So my first one goes out to a couple different people. My first one goes out to the music legend Johnny Cash. One, because he's an amazing musician. But number two, I don't know if you've heard about this, but Johnny Cash will actually be replacing a few different old Civil War, a.k.a. Confederate generals, I believe. Where is this at? I'm trying to find it now. Which state it's in.
I didn't even know Johnny Cash was still alive, to be honest.
On Capitol Hill. There you go. No, he's not alive.
Oh, okay.
No, he's not alive. He died a few years ago. But yeah, so basically what's really great is Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, signed a bill that came into a law that replaces two of the statues of the 19th century figures at the U.S. Capitol, statues of civil rights leader, so Johnny Cash will be replacing one, and then civil rights leader Daisy Lee Gatson Bates will be replacing the Confederate generals or Confederate statues on Capitol Hill in Little Rock. So I think that's amazing. I think that's great. For all the people out there who say, oh, Southern pride and blah, 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 to have these statues up of Confederate monuments, all I can say to them is, I don't know why you need monuments of losers to a war.
Ooh,
shots fired. I'm going for it. I'm
with you. And then there are also people that are like, oh, it's history. Like, it's like you can't get rid of history. And I just find the irony in that. It's like, you guys aren't even properly teaching the history. And it's like, yet, it's like, this is not, it's what I don't understand. I just didn't understand the logic. And I think that's great. I sent you a picture earlier today of some guy's pickup truck. And by the way, I live in Pennsylvania, one of the original northern states.
Right.
And he had a whole bunch of stickers on his car talking about like redneck and like come take it. And it was like a picture of a Confederate flag. And he had two Confederate flags on the back of his truck, one on the side, and then truck nuts on the back. And then he was driving a Dodge Ram, and on the front license plate area, we don't have front license plates, he had a Dodge logo with like the Confederate flag, a Ram logo with like the Confederate flag like within it. It was crazy. This dude, okay, there's one thing to, I don't even know. I was about to say there's one thing. I was about to say there's one thing to what? There's no excuse. I have no excuse for this. This dude's like truck was a shrine to it. And it's like, it's just the irony that you're in a state where they actively fought against that.
Right. Oh, for sure. So big shout out, big ups, and a lot of love to our representative, Governor Hutchinson, that has now replaced the Confederate statues with Johnny Cash and also with Daisy Lee Gatson Bates, who was also an integral part of basically starting with desegregation of schools in Arkansas. So that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely glad, even though I'm glad they're taking it down or replacing it with something, I'm definitely glad that they threw in an actual civil rights, activist, and not just
as they should,
not just a musician.
Johnny Cash. Right.
So I have a sad shout out, I guess. Sad. That was an accident. I'm sorry. I was gonna try to do something stupid, but I'm not even gonna bother. So Notre Dame, there was a fire at the famous Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and it was it's hard to watch. I have a picture of it here in my notes, and it's weird to look at. You know, it's something that's been an icon of Paris for so long. I mean, it's not destroyed, and they will rebuild it, but there's something about the historical value of something so old like that. But I tried to look at it kind of on the bright side. Is that like, you know, we're living. You know, this church was made a long time ago. I don't know exactly when, but a long time ago, obviously. Mm-hmm. And just because we're looking at it as a historical monument now doesn't mean that we're not still like living. Like it's still not it's still a living building. And there have been many historical, you know, famous historical buildings over time that have been destroyed, bombed, burned down, that have been rebuilt. And like, for example, when we were in Berlin, we saw a church in Berlin that was bombed during the war that they didn't even renovate, just had a giant hole in it from a bomb from World War II. And
as a reminder.
Exactly.
Do you remember the name of that church, by the way?
Not at all, no.
Kaiser Wilhelms Gedächtniskirche.
Okay, that makes sense because Gedächtnis is like remembrance
remembrance, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And because right next to it was that super modern church that looked very modern. But yeah, so like even though it's a sad thing to see something burned that you want to be preserved, it's like, well, this is now like we're now living in a historical moment. Like this will be talked about for decades and centuries, and this will now be, you know, in 2300 when people are going on tours and looking at this church, they'll talk about how in 2019 it burned down and 20 years later or whatever it was rebuilt. And so it is sad to see, and you know, obviously you want to preserve it as much as possible, but I also think that this is how history works and this is how the world works in a weird way. But yeah, it was rough to see. What was even rougher to see was everyone's Instagram and Twitter feeds, because it did somehow turn into a brag fest about the time that someone was in Paris.
Right, and I refused. I have pictures of it. I visited Notre Dame as well, and I refused to post one on that merit. It was, and I have a friend here. I guess a little mini shout out to my buddy Alex here in Prague. You met Alex, great guy.
Oh,
met him at Usudu. But Alex actually posted something on his Facebook along the lines of, this is just becoming an excuse for people to post their pictures of their trip to Paris that nobody wanted to see in the first place, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean,
it is tragic, though.
I've seen a lot of Paris pictures, and it's like, it's almost, it's like, there was a funny, oh man, I wish I could, I probably can't find it because I texted it to someone. There was a funny Onion article. The Onion is ruthless. They
are.
They tweeted, or is it on Instagram? Notre Dame gargoyle going to stay as still as possible until arson investigator is gone.
Right. I had another friend that said those gargoyles need to stop smoking joints on the roof of the building or something crazy. Yeah. So people definitely have taken an opportunity to make this. I mean, well, with every tragedy, I think people try to make humor out of it, you know? I think that's kind of a normal thing. The other thing, though, that I think is a little sad about this, yes, it is tragic that super historical and important building in Paris, Notre Dame, has, you know, burnt down and been somewhat destroyed. But I think this also shows you where the world's priorities are. There have been billionaires and millionaires just donating tons of money to rebuild it, right? In a matter of days, I thought I read somewhere around, it was at almost somewhere like 500 million, right?
Jeez, how much do they need?
Well, I have no idea, but here's the thing, though. Imagine if those millionaires and billionaires tossed their money at other problems we have in the world and how quickly some of those could be solved.
Right.
We still don't have clean water in Flint, Michigan.
Yeah. How's
5
Puerto
years
Rico doing?
later. Yeah, Puerto Rico's not doing great. You know, there's famine, I'm pretty sure, in Yemen. There's all these different things going on, and it sadly shows you how Eurocentric a lot of the Western world is.
Right.
I would say, especially, I mean, how many people do you know that will romanticize Paris when it's like, oh, where are you going in Europe? So many people are like, oh, you have to go to Paris, you know? But yeah, so it's just interesting. But yeah, it is a tragic thing, and it is good that people are trying to donate and rebuild, but nonetheless, I digress. Anyways, I have a shout out going out to Guinness, Because
The beer or the world record company?
the beer. Thank you.
Okay.
That's a very good distinction here. Guinness will stop using plastic in beer multi-packs. Now they will start using biodegradable cardboard for their for their 4-packs and other packs of beer. Now it will be starting in Ireland in August, and then they will be introduced in Britain and other markets starting summer of 2020. But I think it's absolutely fantastic because we've all seen the videos and the pictures of wildlife that has gotten caught up in plastic, and either they grow and they have severe deformities, or they end up dead or whatever. So I think it's great that Guinness is doing this. It's very environmentally conscious, and I hope other breweries and other beer companies, and also Coca-Cola companies, I want to say pop, but to all of our listeners out there, soda companies, that feels so wrong to say, soda companies out there will also follow suit.
Myself, so right. Sounds right to me.
As a Midwesterner, and spent 25 of my 27 years in Michigan, pop is what I say. It's in my blood.
Yeah, I mean, as someone that spent most of my life in Michigan too, I often got called out for saying soda, and it's like, I don't know, it just happened this way.
Right. He's one of those guys.
At least I'm not saying like cold drink or Coke for everything, which is what all my family says in the South.
Right.
Everything's a Coke, or they say cold drink.
Right. Yeah, crazy.
But yeah, no, that's good. It's good to see those steps being taken. Especially for someone like me that lives in Philadelphia, it's a wasteland of pollution here. But anyway, let's turn this positivity train around with some untranslatables.
I have some special ones for us today, Jared.
Oh, okay.
I tried to find some that were loosely related to our topic today. I always try to do that, but sometimes to no avail. Sometimes there's just nothing that really fits with it, or I just find really cool ones that I want to use anyway. So I'll start us off with a German one. And I'm pretty sure we have not used this one before. So here it goes. The term is Schilderwald.
Well, Wald is forest.
Schilder.
Schild. Huh. What is that?
It's like a sign, a street sign.
Oh, okay. Sign forest?
Uh-huh.
Is that like the middle of nowhere? Is that like saying BFE, as we would say?
No, it's the opposite.
Oh, it's like a busy area, metropolis.
Well, so imagine.
I get it. It's like a forest filled with signs, and it's almost like Times Square or something like that. Will be a Schilderwald.
Right, exactly. Basically, it's a street crowded with so many road signs that you become lost.
Yeah.
Schilderwald.
Oh man, yeah. Okay. My first one is Swedish, and it's Finns det hijar terum sa finns det stigerturum. Okay. Where there's heart space, there's butt space.
Now, I don't know if the Swedes are into the ghetto booties. I'm thinking maybe not, so that probably doesn't have to do with this one. Where there's heart space, there's butt space.
Yeah. If you love me, you would let... No, I'm kidding. That's not what it is.
I was going to say, yeah, okay, interesting. Huh. If there's heart space, there's butt space. I'm hoping if I just keep repeating it, somehow it will magically get into my brain.
So think about it. Specifically, think about the word space. Think about what they're saying. Like they're saying, if there's space here, then there's space there.
So is it like, is it, I have no idea. Is it kind of like there's always room for more? The more, the merrier?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a nice way of saying there's always room for one more as long as everyone is friendly. Or you can use it to mean like you want to fit somewhere on like people are jammed on a sofa or something like that.
Like squeeze them in? Okay.
Yeah.
I also love the term the more the merrier.
Yeah.
I love that term in English. I think that's
that
a
one
great
gets a lot of use here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
I think you're about to say you love the term butt space.
I mean, I do as well. That's also a pretty good one. All right, Jared, my next one for you is Japanese,
Okay.
and it is yokomeshi, which it literally means a meal eaten sideways.
Oh, dead air. You've stumped me on this one.
This one's a good one. So I'll tell you, Jared, when I first moved to the Czech Republic, sometimes when I would go out in public, I felt like I was experiencing a meal eaten sideways.
You like everyone's looking at you weird, or you
Nope.
experience?
This also kind of has to do with, so you eat a meal with your mouth. So it has something to do with that kind of.
Like you feel like you stick out like a sore thumb or something like that.
Nope.
Okay.
So how was my Czech when I first moved here, Jared?
Not good.
How's my Czech now?
Better than that.
Better, but also not great. Not great. Definitely not. So,
Oh, it's like you can't make a sentence, essentially, or like you can't communicate.
Kind of. It refers more to. I'm gonna just tell you what it is. It refers to the peculiar stress induced by speaking a foreign language. So when I first came here, a lot of times I would get super anxious about even the smallest language interaction because, now it doesn't faze me at all. It doesn't really matter. So a meal eaten sideways. Yokomuvite anglicky.
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to use that one anymore. Well, I'm sure you still sometimes.
I still do. I definitely do.
My next one is Spanish, specifically from Panama, and it's te estoy levantando.
Can you say that one more time?
Te is te. Te estoy levantando. Levantando.
That's better. And what does that mean?
I am blowing you up.
Blowing you up. Is that like we say in English, you're buttering someone up?
No. Although that's a good guess. Now that I never thought about it because I know what the answer is, but that's a good guess. I love blowing you up, especially when it comes to.
Oh, is that just when you're roasting somebody? Oh, no, it's too easy. Oh, that's funny.
Yes, to make fun of someone.
Okay. Yeah?
I did not think that would be that easy.
Right. I knew
I think I need to
immediately once you said
reevaluate
that.
some of my actions.
Which is funny, though. One of our listeners, Ashley, mentioned she loves the fact that you roast me. So apparently our listeners enjoy it, so keep it up, buddy.
You betcha.
I got to learn to not be so damn sensitive all the time. So it's good for me as well.
At least you don't seem to outwardly be. Maybe after these episodes, you just curse me out every day.
That's right. F this guy. He's blowing me up all the time. That's right. When I come onto the podcast, I feel like a Yoko Meshi from your roasts. No, not really. Not really. Okay, so my last one for you today, Jared, is Czech. Don't worry, I didn't run out of them. Not yet. We'll see. And it is Zůstává rozum stát, which means to leave your reason standing.
By the way, I think you can make it. You've got what, 2 more months?
Yep, I think
you can make it. That's crazy. 2 more months. It's been 8 months since you've been there.
Yeah.
How long have we been doing this podcast?
I think 9 months, 10 months.
9 or 10 months. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. Anyway, what? Can you give me the English one again? Sorry.
Yeah, leave your reason standing. Zůstává rozum stát.
Or is it like you're just making excuses?
To leave your reason standing, Jared, is, let me try to give you an example without it being a dead giveaway. To leave your reason standing would be like if we go order something at a Czech restaurant while you and Don were here, right? Mm-hmm. We order something. It's clear the waitress, understood what we wanted. Then she brings us something, completely different, and we're just standing there.
Oh, like dumbfounded almost.
Yeah, basically dumbfounded,
flabbergasted.
Or not necessarily.
That's a little too much, isn't it?
Kind of dumbfounded. Basically, when something's flipped all the way around, and you're just kind of like, what?
Okay.
Yeah, to leave your reason standing. Basically, you don't you're like, how did this happen?
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How did we get to this? Because I thought, yeah. Sort of like Speaking of roasting you, sort of like when I recommend a topic and then the next day you say you recommend a completely different one. And I was like, I thought we just agreed to something yesterday.
Oh, that would have been a great example right there. Yeah, that would have been a great example. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I like that
Exactly.
one. That's a good one.
I have to say, man, I've been enjoying learning a lot of these Czech ones. Sadly, I have not really been able to apply them in my, speech when I'm talking to Czech people because it would probably be just so out of the blue. They'd just be like, what? But it's still fun to learn, and it gives you an interesting insight into languages and culture, which is why we love to do this. And we hope all of our listeners out there have been enjoying all of these random untranslatables, and also putting ourselves out there and trying to speak languages where we have no idea how to actually pronounce anything.
Yes. Thank you all for being so polite and not roasting us for our not blowing us up for our terrible pronunciations.
That's right.
Soon, when you're in wherever your new place will be after Czech Republic, we'll have to switch to wherever that is. I mean, I don't know where it's going to be, but we'll have to switch to new blah 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 word of the day, and new untranslatables. So that'll be exciting.
We definitely will. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jared, another big thing about doing these untranslatables is our hope that this will inspire our listeners to want to explore new cultures, and a big part of that is traveling. But a lot of times when we want to travel places, we may have that voice in our head that maybe stops us from traveling. There can obviously be other restrictions as well, whether it's financial, time. Maybe you have never traveled solo before and you're terrified of the thought of going solo. So I think it's time that we discuss some of our travel fears and other common travel fears and give some tips and ideas maybe how we can overcome them. And if it's all right with you, I would like to start. Can I guess some of your travel fears?
Sure.
You betcha.
You sounded super excited about that. So
you're gonna get it right. That's the only thing in it.
Right. So this one is kind of I'm cheating a little bit because we've talked about this. And I think your number one travel fear is you're not afraid to travel solo, but I think you're afraid of traveling solo, and I know you really well, and I think you're a great guy. But I think you aren't always super outgoing and willing to just talk to anybody. Right. So I think one of your travel fears might be going somewhere solo and worrying that your trip might not be great because you're not as willing to be open and outgoing and just talk to anyone. Am I right?
That's definitely one of my biggest ones. I've for a couple of years now, essentially since I've been out of college, I've been telling myself that I'm going to do a solo trip, probably to Europe, or maybe not, who knows, at some point. And that was honestly sort of my goal for my first post-college Euro trip. Granted, I didn't know we'd be doing a podcast together at the time. I didn't know you'd be in Czech Republic at the time.
Sure.
So there were some different situations that made me, want to change that. But I still do really want to do that. I want to go somewhere on my own. And that is a big fear because, as you mentioned, it's not the physical getting there that's the part that makes me nervous. And I'm not even really nervous about being in a new environment. It's more nervous that I'm wasting a trip, where it's like, I'll tell myself, for example, as I'm sure if anyone's listened to any podcast other than this one, they know that I've recently got laid off. And a bunch of people, both my parents, my friend Brad, some people that I've been talking to, have mentioned to me, reach out to old coworkers, reach out to your old bosses, and just they don't have to, have a specific job for you or anything, but just reach out to them and talk to them, and so they'll keep you in mind, and so maybe they know people, all that sort of networking stuff.
Sure.
And one of the people is my ex-boss, not the one that got not the one that was there. I had a boss
got canned.
Right. There, I had one before that left like a year or so ago, and he lives in North Carolina now. And my parents and everyone's telling me, "Hey, have you talked to your old boss? Have you called him?" And I was like, no. I was like, I can't bring myself to do it. There's something about the the ego and the pride that doesn't, it almost feels like I'm just crawling to her or something. I don't know, but it's just that sort of same mentality in most situations I'm in that stop me from reaching out to people. And I even think about that here, Like here
Right.
in Philly where I live, I've lived here for 4 years almost, and I've never like really done that before. I've never, been at a bar and been like, oh, and struck up a conversation unless I'm, I don't know. I've just never done that.
Right. Right. The only time I can recall is when I challenged you to do it,
And I still
maybe
didn't do that. I actually
20
haven't done
episodes. Well, no, yeah. You didn't go to the bar, but you did strike up some conversations at that party you went to.
That. Oh yeah,
Right.
That's
So
right.
you did that. You did
It's a little
that.
different though. I mean,
Right.
I was with a lady friend, so
Right.
it was a little different. And see that's the exact point. Is if I'm like in an environment where I'm with someone or like where I can have some sort of icebreaker. Whether then it's easier. But that really is a concern to me, and that's honestly even more than the financial part of it. I think that's stopping me. Where it's like I don't want to go somewhere and just wander around by myself for the whole time. Obviously, I want to do that as well.
Right.
But I want to have one of those Don vacations, where he can't help but strike up conversation with anyone within
Right.
arm's reach of him.
Right. And I would even have to, well, first of all, for all of our listeners out there, give a listen to that episode because Don has a lot of great travel advice, how to make friends, a lot of really good content coming from our social media influencer / ambassador, which is fantastic. But I think the thing that about traveling solo too is you have to be outgoing unless you want to be by yourself and isolated the whole time, for sure. But I think there's also a lot of learning that you do about yourself and about other things when you do travel alone,
Right.
And I know you're a very intelligent, resourceful, feel weird saying this, but intelligent, resourceful
lying.
young man. I'm not lying. But I think that for you, I could see you going somewhere and maybe, getting out of your shell and talking to some people, but also having a great time doing a fair amount of exploring on your own and checking out stuff and having a blast,
Yeah, I'm definitely not afraid to get lost. And as far as like the exploring part of it, that part, I feel like I got that down pretty well. Where I'm happy
Right.
to just go full maps off in a lot of situations.
Right. And that's a big travel fear I think many people struggle with is the fear of getting lost. But I think once you've traveled, especially traveled abroad, and you've gotten lost before, I think getting lost is far more terrifying when you're alone than with friends. With friends, it becomes more of an adventure.
Right.
I think, if you're a more seasoned traveler, I think then you can definitely get lost by yourself and not freak out. There have been a few times where I've gotten lost a few places here. And like one time it was maybe my second or third week here. And I was riding my bike home and it was like dark. And I went the wrong way and I like kept going. And I was like, wait, this isn't right. And I think me a few years ago probably would have freaked out. But, I kept my cool, which is really important whenever you travel solo in general, but also if you get lost. I think the biggest thing is people tend to panic.
Right.
When you panic, you can't think properly. You just, you can't. You have a bajillion thoughts racing through your mind. You can't do it. And so I kept calm and just was like, all right, I didn't know Chomutov very well. So I was like, all right, I need to find, what was it? There's this like really high building that if I can see that, I can kind of see where my apartment is, and that's how I found my way home. So landmarks are also a great thing to try to remember when you travel, either with friends or solo, so it can kind of reduce the anxiety when you get lost. Another story, I don't know if I told you this when we recorded our last episode, but I went and I had a really lovely dinner and just a really great conversation with my mentor / supervisor and her mom. Last week, and I took the bus to her place, and she lives in the next village over called Yurkov. And so I took the bus there. She told me the way to go, and everything was fine. I got there; it was great. Then I left. I left around I think 9 p.m. and it was dark, and I had never been on this specific bus coming back. And she told me get off at Chomutov Pisechna was the name of the stop. Well, I'm an idiot. And there was a stop that was just called Pisechna. And of course, my stupid ass got off there. And I look, and I got off because we were going down the street, and there was a grocery store that they also have in Chomutov. And so I thought, oh, and that grocery store that we passed by is right on my street. So I thought, oh, sweet. I'm going to get off here, walk straight through the street, and I'm at my apartment. I get off. I check on my phone just to double check, which is a wonderful luxury if you have it and can use it when you get lost. That can also reduce anxiety big time. I looked at my phone. It's like the walk was 2.7 miles. So I was like, I'm not going to do this. And at first I was like, shit. It's like 9 p.m. A lot of the buses stop running at like 9:30 or 10.
Right.
I was like,
am I going to have to walk 2.7 miles?
Right. And at first I was like, well, I got to walk. I guess I'm getting home at 10, right?
Right.
And so I started to walk and I was like, wait a minute. I'm at a bus stop. There will be more buses. So I checked the bus stop and I waited, and it was really funny. I checked the bus stop and then I realized a student of mine had showed me an app for the bus system here in Chomutov, and I had it on my phone. So that was a lifesaver.
Yeah.
So also be resourceful whenever you travel, and I think that will also help cut down on some of your travel fears.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that a little bit more later, but the last thing I want to mention, I looked up on the app, found the right bus, right? I'm standing there, and like the where the bus stop is, it's like on a highway, and it's like a 4-lane highway, so it's pretty big. And there were still some cars going back and forth, right? And I'm like, all right, I need to get on like the 141, right? Then I see it pull up on the other side of the street, and there's all these cars coming. I'm like, shit, I can't get on my bus. Great. So then I realized that was where I needed to go. And so then because I missed that bus, I had to wait 30 minutes for the next bus to come. So I probably would have gotten home the same amount of time had I have walked. But
right.
At that point, it was cold and I was tired. So there you go.
I mean, but that's a great. I mean that everyone that's traveled abroad or to a different city or in general and has used public transportation has probably had that experience. We had that experience in Berlin. We were going somewhere and
that was hilarious.
And we're like, I don't remember any of this. It's getting a little rural out here.
Right.
It's like, this seems like the wrong way. They were like one stop from the end stop at the wrong direction. And, stuff like that happens. You make a great point with the landmarks, though, because I've used that, even in places where, like, for example, when I was in Tanzania and I was in essentially a village out in the middle of nowhere. And, my phone was not usable. And so I was just flying solo. It was full maps off where I didn't even have anything to rely on just in case.
Right.
And what I like to do when I explore any city, this is any city that I don't know, because in Philly I can just go wherever I want. But any city I don't know is I generally walk straight. So I don't turn that often. And if I do, I'm turning at a place with a very distinctive landmark. So like I'll be like, oh, I turned at this roundabout, for example. Like this is the actual things I remember when I was in Tanzania. Like I still remember it. Like I turned at this roundabout, or like I turned at this spot where there was these houses, then right next to it a giant open field. And so say I explored this area for 2 hours, and I probably turned a total of 3 to 4 times.
Right.
And so that is something I like to do if I'm going to go full maps off is just don't turn that much.
Right. Oh, for sure.
So you can keep track of all your turns.
Exactly. That's an absolutely great tip. And the other thing too is I think a lot of people need to overcome their fears of using public transport,
Yes.
I've been here now for I think 7 or 8 months. I've only been on the bus a couple of times. And with these last few months, actually what I'm hoping to do is hop on the bus more. One, because it's not very much money. I think it's like maybe $1 and I think that's for like an hour. So I could hop on at the beginning stop and go all the way to end stop if I wanted to, and probably I could probably even, depending on how long the bus route is, start at one stop and then come all the way back to that stop. And it would probably still be less than an hour.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why I didn't use the bus beforehand is, one, most of the things that I need I can get within walking distance here in Chomutov. But I was thinking about it when I took the bus to visit my mentor, and like there were just so many cool things I saw just on that one little bus trip.
Right.
And so I think to all of our listeners out there who visit a new city, take the public transportation if you can. Also walk as much as you can as well. As long as the weather's okay and you have decent walking shoes, I think walking is a great way to explore places. And don't be afraid to get lost, and don't be afraid to take public transit. And the nice thing is, too, a lot of times with public transit, if you get lost or have a problem, usually somebody can tell you're kind of nervous or distressed and they might help you.
Go back the direction you came.
Exactly. And the other thing is, too, I had a friend who was actually in China working there as an English teacher, and he told me he got on the bus and had to go somewhere, and he told the bus driver where he needed to go, and the bus driver couldn't really understand him because at the time he didn't speak very good Chinese. And so then what's interesting is, and I don't think this is typical, but this just does go to show that people will try to help you. This woman who didn't speak any English called her friend on her phone who spoke English, talked to the guy, my buddy, and then put the phone on speaker and told the bus driver, and they got everything figured out.
Wow.
That's obviously an extreme case, but I think a lot of times if you are nice and people, I think most times people are willing to help you. Most of the time. Not always, but I would say most of the time. The only place I've been where people were not willing to help me, take a guess, Jared.
Germany?
No, Germany I've had great people who have always helped me.
Not willing to help you. I don't know, the U.S., somewhere in the U.S.?
No.
New York or something?
The city of love, Paris.
Oh, Paris?
Yeah, nobody would help me. I got lost. I was walking around and I got lost. And I had, beads of sweat dripping down my face. I had to be somewhere at a certain time. Probably, or very close to it. And nobody was willing to help me. And then finally I wandered around enough where, once again, ironically, the landmark I found was Notre Dame. And that helped me get home.
Okay, well, there you go. Bring it full circle. That's a professional podcaster right there.
That's right.
Another common fear is the financial fear.
Sure. That's usually mine.
Yeah. That was fear is kind of a weird word because it's not a fear. Well, it kind of was a fear, but it started off as just like an easy way for me to postpone the trip, where it's like, when I've saved up enough money. And honestly, when I booked this trip that I just did to visit you, I wasn't really in that much of a better financial situation than I was, say, a year or two ago when I was saying that to myself. It's just I finally accepted that I would be like spending that money, and
right.
And sometimes you can't just accept that. Some people have to actually make these, have to make the decisions. But there's plenty you can see for cheap. Like you don't have to cross an ocean, or you don't have to, get on a plane to see stuff. So like, I think that might be a deterrent to maybe go to some places, but that should not be stopping you from traveling. Oh,
for sure. I mean, and we'll be having an episode in the near future with some tips about that, so stay tuned. Yeah. But you raise an absolutely great point. I think so many people idealize travel as going to foreign countries and all these, exotic places. But traveling could be hopping in your car or a friend's car, going on a little road trip, Could be anywhere from half an hour, 5 hours, who cares how long. But as long as you go somewhere new for a little while, I would consider that in a lot of ways traveling.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't have to be like, just because the flight might be expensive, relatively speaking, the actual trip doesn't have to be.
Right.
And we'll talk more about that later. But it really, once you're there, it doesn't have to be expensive.
Oh, most definitely.
Another common... Oh, go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to mention about the finances thing, I think there's so many people, especially more our age, millennials, where you worry about the money, but at the same time, at the end of the day, the money you can replace money. You can work, if you had to. I'm not saying people should be going into debt just for a vacation. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is, this is going to sound very cliche, but when you travel, these are things that, like, in a way, money can't buy. Like, you can't replace, like, yes, you need money to travel, but at the end of the day, when we're old and either have money or don't have money, when we look back at life, I would rather look back at my life and say, yeah, I could have more money saved up now maybe if I wouldn't have traveled, or if I wouldn't have lived abroad for a year in the Czech Republic or whatever. Mm-hmm. But, those aren't the experiences that really matter to me. What's in my bank account, yeah, it's important to survive, obviously. But at the same time, you have ways to get money. You can work,
I
can
don't.
do whatever. You could, if you wanted to, you could sell an organ,
That's
Jared.
true,
Who knows
right?
what, But what I'm
If
trying
anyone
to
needs
say
a kidney,
here,
hit me up.
right? What I'm trying to say here, though, is you can't really replace travel. Money
Right.
you can replace.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely felt that way when I got back from our trip, where that was the first time I've done, it wasn't a solo trip, but that was the first time I've traveled abroad, like without my family, for example. And when I got back, maybe for a hot sec, it was a little rough to look at my bank statement and all that stuff. But honestly, I was quickly trying to figure out how I can make this happen again. And when's the next, not even how I can make it happen, but when would be the next time I was going. Or I was
Right.
that was totally worth it to me. And if it means maybe skipping out on a couple fancy dinners here at home, I think it's totally worth it.
Right.
Because those to me seem fleeting in comparison to traveling, even though I do like fancy food.
Exactly. Sure.
Another big one, I think, this is something that is for me personally that I've experienced twice, and that's getting sick abroad.
Yes, that's a big fear of mine too.
Well, one time it happened to me. One time I was just super nervous about it. In Tanzania, obviously, I was very nervous about it. I was very nervous about that. One, because I had to take the malaria. I got the malaria shots beforehand, and then they also prescribe. They meaning like the travel doctor that gives the malaria shots. Also, did I say subscribe? Prescribes.
Prescribe. I thought you said prescribe.
Maybe I did. Prescribes Z-Packs, which are kind of like. Can you explain a Z-Pack as a former pharmacy tech?
Oh, geez. Isn't
It's just like a cure-all to essentially.
Right.
It's just like if something goes wrong, take this and it should make you feel better for at least a short period of time.
right? I don't need to explain it. You did a great job explaining it.
Okay. And so that when I was in Tanzania, obviously a big no-no for someone like me coming from Snowflake America is water. You can't
Right.
can't drink their water. There are a couple times just out of habit. It often happened with toothbrushing. That was
Yep.
a couple times. I never fully consumed it, but I definitely washed off my toothbrush under the sink a couple times just without thinking. And then as I
Right.
was halfway through brushing my teeth, I was like, shit. And I
Right.
was like, well, it's done now.
Right.
And then another time, also with toothbrushing, was rinsing my mouth out. I would just put my mouth under the sink and not use the water bowl without thinking, and be rinsing it out and be like, oh God.
Right.
And I mean, I never got sick, but I got super paranoid. And I
Right.
think that one thing that it made me realize is that it's probably, to be clear, don't take this to mean you can be more careless, but it's probably harder to get sick that way than one might think. I
Right.
think maybe I gotta you can't just swoosh it around in your mouth and maybe drink a pinch of it. You gotta drink a cup of water maybe or something like that.
Right.
And two, it takes simple precautions to avoid that. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Another thing that happened to me was when we studied abroad in Austria, I got an inner ear infection. And I held off, I was sort of in denial for the longest time of it. Because my ear was in serious pain, but I was like, it'll go away. It's the little thing. And then I'd put a Q-tip in there, and my earwax was straight up green.
Ooh,
and I was
that's
like,
not a good
I
sign.
don't think that's a good sign.
Right.
And so I had to go to a hospital in a foreign country at 2 a.m. I went, and shout out to Christine TC Luby.
Nice.
She
Nice.
went to the hospital with me at
Oh, that's awesome.
at 1 or 2 a.m. And we were there, and there was someone in front of me that was bleeding from his face, and I was
jeez.
and I was at the desk telling my problem. The guy was behind me, whining. I mean, he was legitimately whining, and please help me. And the lady's like, "Sir, I'm helping the person in front of you." And I was like, I mean, he can go if it's
Right.
I can wait a second. This
Right.
guy's bleeding from his face.
Right. That's crazy.
But it was it made me it was I was real nervous there just because it's I I can, luckily I was in Austria, which is they speak English very well in Austria. So for the most part, you don't really have to concern yourself with people, especially a doctor, obviously. I mean, they're probably required to. But like there was definitely, I mean, and also, spoiler, my doctor spoke English probably better than I did. So it wasn't a problem. But like, there was definitely like a concern where it's like, I hope like I explain my issues properly. I hope he understands the problem. I hope like I don't explain it wrong and he sends me off with a medication that does nothing. And and it's just it is sort of and then after that, I had to go to apotheca, which is essentially a pharmacy for those of you that don't know, and get a prescription on my own. And it's just like between going to the doctor, getting the prescription, not knowing like what the bill's gonna be like after, which I mean, which wasn't it was a very sort of nerve-wracking process,
right?
And I can imagine that when you're in a place, like Tanzania, for example, that like where you're essentially doing everything in your power to avoid that. The easiest way to avoid it is not to go. But, nothing happened. And I took literally the simplest of precautions. And obviously I wasn't that cautious, clearly, to avoid it. And I came back fine. And I think that it's very easy to avoid that. And now that I've been to a place like Tanzania and been to a hospital in a foreign country, I don't think that is a fear for me.
Right. And I had a medical scare here as well. That you know about, but our listeners haven't. But I'll mention it because it's kind of interesting. So I'm also terrified about getting sick, especially here because I live alone. I've just been starting to dabble in cooking, but it's like when you're sick, you don't want to cook for yourself. You want something that's easy. The more time you can spend in bed and try to recuperate and get better, obviously, the quicker you'll recover. And so a very good friend of mine, my buddy David, who's been a guest on our podcast, shout out to David, came down with mono. And so the
kissing disease.
The kissing disease is right. I was smooching him too much. No, not really. But
you betcha.
What's crazy though is the week before he got sick, we were in Prague together and we hadn't hung out in a while. So we were obviously drinking and we were sharing a bottle of tequila. And so, as Jared knows, but our listeners don't know, I was super paranoid that I would get mono. Super paranoid. I even told Jared, I was like, look, man, if it gets really bad, like you need to get, what will we do? How will we record the podcast? Knock on wood, or as they do in the Czech Republic, they knock on their teeth.
Oh. There's another untranslatable right there.
Right. I'm fine. And what's really funny, though, is I have a checkup with my doctor here in the Czech Republic next week. Not because of that, just because I thought it would be good to get a checkup and everything and blah, blah, blah. Well, I had my mentor call because he speaks some English, but, it's easier to have her just circumnavigate everything and talk to him in Czech. And she told him the situation with mono and everything and literally did not hesitate at all and said, it's very, very, very unlikely that he has mono. He's 27. Most people after 25 have come in contact with with EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, which is what gives you mono. He should be fine. Don't worry about it. So basically the fact that he told me we're not even going to test you for it, you're fine, has already completely, it's crazy how much mental goes into sickness. And kind of like you mentioned with Tanzania, how like you were super paranoid after you swished with water, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guarantee you had someone had told you have to, swallow like a cup of water, I'm sure that would have made you feel a lot less paranoid. You know what I mean?
Right. But I probably would have accidentally taken one sip of water or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. No. And I think that paranoia, maybe not paranoia, but that cautiousness is good.
Oh, definitely.
Because you want to do the best you can to avoid this stuff, but you don't want it to freeze you, prevent you from doing stuff just because you're like, what if this happens?
Right. Can I say a few more things related to the sickness before you move on?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too, though, my tip for anyone traveling, keep a copy of your insurance card on you. I mean, you should have that on you anyways, but keep a copy of your insurance card on you. Jared's making a face. Maybe he doesn't do that. The other thing is too, I would also keep a copy of your insurance card somewhere on your phone. Email it to yourself. Have it somewhere in case if your wallet gets stolen, you have it. And also make sure to check, if you're traveling abroad, check with your insurance to see if you will be covered, because not all, at least in the United States, not all health insurance will cover you while you're abroad. And the insurance I have right now only covers me in the Czech Republic. So when we were in Berlin, had something happened, I would have been screwed. Over the border. Right, yeah. Jared, we need to get on a train. Take me to the Czech Republic. Let's go. So I actually have 2 insurances while I'm here just to be covered when I travel. Look into that before you go. But I think that's a very warranted fear, to worry about getting sick or injured, what will happen, especially with the language barrier if you're in a foreign country. And there could even not only be a language barrier, but maybe a slight difference in culture of medicine. I know if you go to some Asian countries, the way that they will treat your symptoms or illness might be very different than the way we may do it in the Western world. So just be aware of those things before you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another fear that I have, which one should I start with? Let's go with food. Let's talk about food.
Okay, sure.
You and I are known picky eaters. Sometimes I'm almost ashamed of my picky eatingness. There are certain stuff that that I haven't eaten that I'm just like, ugh, I don't know if I'd like that. And there are some places that I would like to travel, say certain Asian countries, and that is a huge fear for me. Where it's like I don't like that I'm this person, and I really don't want to be this person. But it's hard. But and the obvious answer is like, okay, then don't be, But when I'm faced with some food that makes me uncomfortable, I want to just be able to embrace it.
Sure, but so that's easier said than done.
For sure, you're also a picky eater. Mm-hmm. Are you a picky eater that's willing to try everything? Will you try everything?
No, definitely not. So here's my rule of thumb. If the look or the smell or the thought of eating it makes my stomach turn, I'm not going to eat it. And I'm sure I've probably missed out on some really delicious foods. But the thing is, if I lose my appetite by thinking about it or looking at it or smelling it, I'm not at a place mentally where I will probably enjoy it.
I was in South Africa many years ago, and we went on a safari. We were kind of out in the bush, and for one of the meals, we were eating it, and I started eating it before I knew what it was, and then I found out it was ostrich, and which is just a bird, I guess.
It's a big chicken, man. That's all it is.
But it's actually not. It's actually kind of, I thought it was beef. It's kind of a red meat. Okay. But once I heard that, it didn't, it really changed my perception of what I was eating. And it was funny too, because right before they said that, I was eating it normally. And I was like, oh, this is ostrich? And
was it good?
It was fine. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like a less, it's like a variation of almost like a beef, to be honest with you.
Okay. Interesting.
So it has a similar look and consistency to that.
Okay.
From what I remember, at least. But it is interesting how just what your perceptions in your mind can totally change.
Sure.
How food tastes, and I'm with you on that. Especially the smell thing, I guess, and visually sometimes too.
Right.
But I really don't want to be that person. I would because there are a lot of people like that too that will at least take a bite of something,
Right.
And at least accept the discomfort that they'll have for a couple seconds. And I'm really trying to be that person. I mean, there is a chance that you could be faced with situations like this. So what's your plan? Just be like,
we'll see. We'll get more into that later, because I'll probably drop that announcement. We'll probably do an episode about it.
Okay. Because I'm curious about the food aspect of a lot of these travels.
Right. And so here's the thing with me. The one thing that I'm really worried about in terms of traveling anywhere is being served something, and one, it's not what I think it is, or it's not what I order or whatever. And I have kind of a crazy story of a friend of mine who was in Korea at the time, and as a joke, his friends ordered dog, and he ate it. And I can tell you right now, I'm a dog lover, Jared. Check
Yeah,
out
it
our
tastes good.
Instagram with beautiful pictures of my parents' dog.
Is that what you mean by dog lover?
No, not quite. But I can tell you right now, if I were to be served dog and then like mid-bite someone says, oh, by the way, haha, that's dog, I would probably straight up vomit right at the table.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why. And who knows? It might be really delicious. I mean, it's
don't think it
eaten in
is.
a lot of Asian countries. But yeah, and one thing though that I've been invited, and I turned down the invitation. I was invited here in the Czech Republic. They have in some villages they have like a big pig slaughter fest where they have this huge pig. They slaughter it in front of everybody. They drain out everything. And I was invited by a student, and I was just like, look, man, I really appreciate the invite, and this is like a really interesting cultural thing, but I can't do it. Like, my stomach is not strong enough to witness that.
They straight up they straight up slaughter it for everyone to see.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And it's like dangling?
Yep. And they make blood soup out of it. And, I mean, they use pretty much everything from the pig, which I do have to say, I do appreciate, I think, when we do kill animals for food, I do think we should use everything. Nothing should go to waste.
For sure. And I think there is something to there being a like people. It's funny to me the people that eat meat, but then also like talk shit about hunters. Where it's like, I mean, ideally that's how we all eat our meat, and there is such a large disconnect between for most Western people. There's a large disconnect between where our food comes from and like once we're eating it, and I think that if people were more aware of where the food's coming from, they might, one, have more respect for people that are hunting their own food, and two, think twice about the meat they're eating. This includes me, by the way.
For sure. Me too. Well, did you hear about the study? They did a study, I forget who it was, where they said if it was really crazy. It was a bunch of Americans, and they said, if we slaughtered an animal for you to eat in the next room over, would you still eat it? And most of them were like, yeah, okay, yeah. Even if maybe you could, if it was a chicken, you could hear the meat cleaver coming down on it or whatever. But then they said, okay, if we were to slaughter the animal in front of you, would you still eat it? And most of them said no. And I would have to agree with that sentiment. Like, I don't think I could watch an animal... Really? So you could go to the Czech pig slaughter and be like, all right, give me some of that tasty pork rib.
Let's be clear. I'm not interested in watching a pig's neck get slit and watching it bleed out. Like visually, I'm not into that.
Right. But I would hope not.
But I don't think it would turn me off from eating it, even though I don't want to see it. But if I were to see it, that wouldn't turn me off.
Oh man, I would lose my appetite big time. I wouldn't be able to do it. But yeah, anyways,
I guess that might happen. I didn't think about that part. I didn't think about the losing the appetite part.
Right.
I mean, but it wouldn't. I might lose my appetite. I don't know. But in theory, it wouldn't stop me from, like, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, I just saw this eating. Maybe I'd, like, get squeamish or something. Right. Like, I can't eat after just watching something bleed out in front of me. But it wouldn't be because, like, I feel sorry for it, if that makes any sense.
I see. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it's food. Yeah,
right.
I feel you.
Right. And
so I have one, Jared.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. I have another big fear that I think a lot of Americans deal with because there's so many Americans who are monolinguals, and that is the language barrier. I think that's a big deterrent from traveling places because they're like, oh, well, and I think that's why a lot of Americans tend to travel to Europe is because the reputation of a lot of countries in Europe, they speak pretty good English. You go to Germany, you go to Holland, or the Netherlands, you go to Sweden, you go to Finland, you go to Norway, you go to Denmark, all of those places, they speak fairly good English. You go to Austria, they speak pretty good English. If you go to Prague in the Czech Republic, you're fine. Come to Chomutov, it's a different story.
Not many tourists in Chomutov, though, I would assume.
Well, there are Czech tourists.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
But not many American tourists. And so I just want to give our listeners a few little tips and tricks because I think... the language barrier is easy to overcome, or at least easy to get the bare necessities so you can travel and still be happy and have a good time. The first one, which I thought was a genius idea, I saw this guy who, he's like one of those travel bloggers. I forget who it was now, but he had a t-shirt. And on his t-shirt had everything you need. It had a picture of food, picture of a toilet, picture of like a train, picture of a taxi. So you could wear this places, and these are like more or less international symbols. And yeah, just point to them, which I thought was a genius idea. That's one way to do it. I think the more 21st century way to do it is bring your smartphone with you.
Yeah.
Have some apps. Now, this can be tricky if you don't have data where you're at. But the nice thing is there are hundreds of dictionary apps that you can download before you go offline, and you can use them while you're offline. I believe there are also some map apps you can download as well that run offline.
I believe you can do that in Google Maps. You can download like sections of like cities, for example,
right?
And certain areas will just be saved into your phone.
Right. And the other thing is not all countries, but many countries nowadays, you will be able to get Wi-Fi at many places. Most hotels, the Wi-Fi could be not so great, but for basic searching purposes or whatever, it's definitely usable.
Right.
So that's one tip about the language barrier. The other thing is, too, learn or write down a couple of important phrases, right? And you know, when I first came here, I had some phrases written down on my notes on my phone, and there are a few times where I just pulled up my phone and showed them, and it got where I needed. I think I was looking for something at a grocery store, and I had written it down, and I showed one of the workers there, and they helped me with it. I went to this really cool little cafe here in Chomutov a few days ago for breakfast, and I wanted over easy eggs, and me being an idiot, I could have just looked that up on my phone, but when I was looking at pictures of the cafe, they had a picture of the food I wanted. So I literally screenshotted that picture of the food and showed it to the waitress and got the food. So take, screenshots, pictures, using your notes on your phone, writing things down. These are all ways to overcome the language barrier. And sometimes it can be kind of fun to try to navigate the language barrier. Yes, it can be frustrating, but it can be fun as well.
I can understand why people would be not want to do that because they might think they look foolish or something. I'm talking about myself.
Right.
I can understand why that would be a deterrent for people. It's like, I don't want to look like an idiot, or I don't want them to. But another thing that me and my piano teacher were just talking about yesterday, where it's like, we've talked about this plenty of times, but like people don't make fun of people that can't speak their language. Like, it just doesn't really happen like that.
Right.
Or it's like, if you're struggling, they're not going to be like, oh my God, what an idiot.
Right.
That's just not really going to happen.
Right. And it's better to struggle and try than not try at all. I think most people are going to be so much more receptive and warm and helpful if you try than if you don't. Usually.
Yes,
obviously, there are cases where people might be in a rush and are just like, there have been some times when I've been in Prague and I've been trying to speak Czech, and they just speak English because it's more convenient, it's easier for everybody, and it's quicker. But there are a lot of times, I think, where people really appreciate it.
I have one more fear. When I was in Tanzania, that was the first time that I've been like not the sticking out in a crowd. Like, I first got to the airport and I was looking for my dad, and I thought, oh, I can't just pick out the black head in the crowd and
right,
and that's him. However, my mom was there. My mom was working. She's like on a nonprofit board, and the person that she works with on that board is a white guy, and his daughter is Asian. She's adopted, and they were getting stared at wherever they went.
Oh,
and
I believe it.
Such a good feeling for me personally.
Okay, nice.
To just walk around and not get stared at while everyone was like, ooh. And that is honestly, at one point in my life, I want to go to Asia eventually. I want to hit all the continents eventually, I guess. But that's honestly kind of a fear for me. I don't want to be like a site, like an exhibit, Right. And I always hear about black people in Asia like getting stared at or like touching people's hair and shit, and I hate that. And I really that really kind of makes me nervous about going to some of the Asian countries as being like a spectacle. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and that can definitely arise depending on where you go. And sadly, there are negative stereotypes associated with all sorts of travelers. You know?
Right.
So yeah, you're right. And you do sometimes have to be careful. And I think it's smart to be aware of those stereotypes. Most definitely.
There's really no tip for it. It's probably going to happen. But there is there is just, I don't know. It's just like I just don't want to be a spectacle. It's a weird feeling,
Right. I actually do have a tip.
Oh,
You just have to be patient and understand that.
Yeah, that's
you
what
know,
people
for some
say.
of these people, you may be the first Asian or black or white or whatever person
Right.
that they have ever seen before.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and you just have to be aware of that. And obviously, I think the way most Westerners and most Americans would act if they saw someone is we probably wouldn't stare because that's generally considered rude. But you know, different cultures interact with foreigners differently. And so you just be mindful of that and don't try not to get offended. And the other thing when you travel in general, try to be as open-minded and accepting of things as how they are, you know?
Right.
I think for a lot of people that could ruin their vacation. Like, why are people staring at me?
Right.
You know,
Right.
but it's, yeah. I think the last thing that I would like to mention about a fear of traveling is being afraid of having your belongings stolen, which I think is a totally warranted and acceptable fear. I think that's a totally fine fear to have, but there are definitely ways that you can avoid this. You know, the easiest way is have a travel buddy. That's number one. But if you do go solo, I think there are also ways you can do it. As Don mentioned on the last episode we recorded with him, don't put all of your money in one place. I think that's a great tip. Something I read the other day, which I thought was really fascinating, was, and I don't know if this is really doable, but somebody said, I was reading this travel blogger, and she said that she keeps a couple extra bank cards with her in case one of her bank cards gets stolen so she can activate it while she's there, which I had never thought about, but that's a genius idea. I don't know what bank she had, but
Yeah,
I think that's really interesting. Also, the other thing too, depending on where you're traveling, what you're bringing with you, and how long you are traveling, it might be worth the investment to get travel insurance. You know,
What does travel insurance entail?
It usually covers whatever belongings you have there. So if they're stolen, you'll have
really heard
money
of
to
that.
replace them. Yeah. I mean, there's different types of travel insurance, but that's one of them as well. And I would also say just be mindful of what you have with you, where you go, and where you have it. I really try to, I always do the pocket check before I leave places.
Yep.
When I walk in very crowded areas, I usually keep my hands in my pockets. So you would literally have to remove my hand from my pocket in order to get to any of my valuables.
Yeah. None of these people are Matt Damon from Ocean's 11, so that's not going to be happening.
Right.
I mean, we both know, I assume, multiple people that have gotten their stuff stolen. And a lot of the times when it's happened, I've thought in my head, because I'm a nice person, I can understand how your shit got stolen.
Right. Sure.
And it, to me, I've never really been concerned about that. Like, I'm aware of it. Let me clarify. And I know that it's possible, but I've never really concerned myself with it. And like, when I traveled to Czech Republic, most of my pants that I had, like I put my wallet in my back pocket like most people do. But at the very least, I made sure that if I was going to be doing that, it was a pocket that had like a button on it at the very least.
That's smart.
And so, by the time, and also just a constant kind of patting of the butt.
Right. But you have to be careful with that because that would also, give any potential thieves or pickpockets, they would know which pocket that is. But yeah, having a zipper or a button is a definite help. I would say zippers are definitely safer than buttons.
For sure. Have you ever gotten anything stolen?
Nope. Never.
No,
knocking on my wood table. No.
Me neither.
But I think it's because I'm always very cautious and I'm usually probably overcautious. That's why I like traveling with you because we tend to balance each other out, I think.
Yep.
But yeah, I think as long as you are aware of your surroundings, your belongings, and also don't make yourself a target. You know, when you travel, especially to a new place, don't get totally shit-faced. That makes you such an easy target for anybody to take advantage of you. You know, I'm not saying don't have a good time, but just know your limits, be aware of what you're doing, and I also try to keep things on the low. You know, don't be loud. I try not to wear super flashy neon pink shirts or American flag shirts.
Come take it.
Or a Make America Great Again hat. Like don't draw like unnecessary
He just wears that
attention
in
to
the privacy of his own home.
That's right. That's right. It matches so well with my laid back vibes shirt. What can I say? Well, Jared, I think it's time for us to share our song of the pod, unless you have any other travel fears you'd like to share.
No, let's talk about it.
And I wanted to do this song this week because we've been talking so much about a lot of scary potential things that could happen, right? It's time for us to chill a little bit, relax.
Yeah,
I think our song of the pod this week by Toots and the Maytals, Funky Kingston, will definitely put you in a laid-back, positive mindset.
First question. What's their relation to Bob Marley? Or is he just like a god over there?
Bob Marley?
Yeah.
I mean, they're completely different. They have no relation as far as I'm aware.
Well, because their album, there's like, maybe it's just but I believe one of their albums like had a picture of Bob Marley in the background or something. Or maybe that's just a guy that looks like him.
Could be. I mean, well, yeah, Bob Marley is super famous in Jamaica. But what's interesting is the Toots and the Maytals, I'm pretty sure, actually recorded and had some big hits out before Bob Marley. I think Bob Marley just had a lot more international success. Not saying that Toots and the Maytals aren't internationally successful. I was super bummed. I found out they played in Prague last year while I was here.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know about it. So that's a big bummer. But they're absolutely fantastic. And the way I found out about them was I was listening to either Bob Marley or Peter Tosh on, also a reggae artist from Jamaica, on Spotify. And then either Funky Kingston or another one of their songs came up. And I absolutely loved it.
They're actually, they're going to be, I'm on my computer right now because I want to see where, they're actually going to be performing 44 minutes away from me on May 30th.
If you're still around there, I'm just saying you should do some podcast homework and go there because I'm sure it would be a great concert.
Yeah, I don't even know where that's at. Anyway, one thing I liked about them, I'm not the biggest reggae fan per se. Mm-hmm. But what I like about this is like a funkier reggae. Like it had like some it's called Funky Kingston, but like it had like an almost American sort of funk sound within it. I think like it wasn't a fully reggae sound to me. And they do claim that they're also like a ska band, which I guess ska and reggae are pretty similar. It's just
ska is just. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's faster. No, I think ska is just a little faster. Usually.
Okay. I like this. I like the song a lot. I had a good vibe to it. You've known about these three for a while.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Toots and the Maytals I've known about for probably 3-4 years. Okay. And it's one. I love the vocal harmonies. The vibe to the song is absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. And give it a listen. It'll put you in a good mood. Who knows? I wouldn't listen to it when you're sitting at your cubicle at work bored because you're going to want to get up and groove and dance to it. But, privacy of your own home, crank this bad boy up, groove to it, move to it. It's absolutely great. Funky Kingston by Toots and the Maytals.
I just Anderson .Paak came out with a new album the other day, and I gave it an initial listen the other day. Mm-hmm. Walking down the street, and I was like I was like walking down the street like this.
Yes, you were moving it. I like it.
It was good. I like it a lot. I'm actually going to listen to it after this. But yeah, I mean, it definitely will make you move, and I love music that does that.
That's the point of music, right?
That's true. That's very true.
That's right. So check it out on our Twitter, Untranslatable1, or on our YouTube Songs of the Pod playlist, which is poppin' for sure.
And it grows twice a week. With every episode, it grows bigger and bigger. Oh, by the way, this is unrelated, but we do have a website, untranslatablepodcast.com. Check it out. In all this free time I've had, I've been adding more untranslatables to it. So
nice.
Up to this point, I have all of the untranslatables that I've said, at least up until episode 50-something, 56, almost 60.
Good work.
Yeah, so I'm going to keep going, but. Check it out. There's a lot you can use some of them. Whip them out if you're ever in those countries, or if you want to impress
great for dinner
someone.
Parties as well. That's for sure. I
mean, we've used it. That's how we had a great conversation with Matthias.
Right.
From all started with an untranslatable.
That's true. Well, Jared, it's time for our Czech word of the pod, and our word of the pod today is strach.
I'm gonna guess that means fear.
Yes, sir. Good job.
Okay. Strach. That kind of sounds German.
Does a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Strach.
Okay. It's a good one. Mm-hmm. Dziękuję for the untranslatable.
Nenny Zach.
Oh, is that you're welcome?
Yeah, or like no. Literally, I think like no for nothing, or basically means
okay,
like
it's
no problem.
Yeah, no problem. I got
Forget about it. No problem.
Hey, this is what we do here.
It is what we do here, Jared. That is for
That's
sure.
very true. All
So,
right.
Jared, what Czech words do you remember?
Man. See, this is not a good week to ask because I did not pay close attention last week. I don't even remember the one. You gave me a new one last week or last episode.
What was the new one for the last episode? Do you remember the English equivalent?
No. Damn it.
All right, well, I'm going to give you a new one, Jared, related to our episode today.
Okay.
And it is pomoc.
Pomoc.
What do you think that means?
It's vacation? Is it travel related?
I mean, kind of. It means help.
Oh, okay.
Help. So
Pomoc?
if you... pomoc.
Pomoc.
Pomoc. Pomoc.
Pomoc.
And I guess I'll give you two. And you should actually know this one because this was a very early Czech word of the pod, which is pozor.
Pozor. Oh. I
It means
remember.
caution.
Oh, caution.
Pozor.
Pozor. Your
Like I
two
was
favorite
walking
words,
around
help
today.
and caution.
Right, right. No kidding. Like a lot of there's signs that you'll see on the side of the train tracks that they'll say pozor vlak, which means like caution train, and the light will flash when the train's coming. So there you
Right.
go.
Oh, that was one of the one of the Czech words that you recently gave me was train station.
Oh, okay.
But I don't remember what it is. I don't remember.
Main is hlavní.
Hlavní chladec?
No. Hlavní nádraží.
Oh, right. Because I remember to remind me of Nástraví.
Yeah, that's right.
Nádraží. Yeah.
Right, that's right. That's
Okay.
right. Well, Jared, I have a couple treats for you today. I have one completely original joke and one like half original. I took a punchline and rewrote the joke. Parada. So here we go. I'm going to give you the one that I rewrote first. So this episode's been talking about fear. What do you call the fear of giants?
I don't know. What is it?
Fee-fi-phobia.
The look on your face before you delivered that punchline was priceless.
That's right. Fee-fi-phobia. I know it's kind of stupid to explain the punchlines, but to our listeners out there who don't understand, especially if English isn't your first language, in a lot of stories and fairy tales, we say that giants say fee-fi-fo-fum.
Well, it's a very specific giant. It's from James and the Giant. Not James and the Giant.
No,
Peach.
Jack and the Beanstalk.
Jack and the Beanstalk. Yeah.
Right. Imagine that peach for some reason being able to talk and say fee-fi-fo-fum.
Just rolling down the.
So, my next one is not an original. I'll try to save the best for last. We'll see. But Jared,
Alrighty.
what is a flat earther's greatest fear?
Science.
You're not wrong. A flat earther's greatest fear is sphere itself.
That is quite a pun right there.
Right? Yep. That's a good one. Because one of our presidents, I believe it was Franklin Roosevelt, said the only thing to fear is fear itself.
Oh, I thought that was JFK.
I thought it was Roosevelt. I could be wrong. All right, Jared, my last joke for you. What do you call a bearded tourist who is afraid of traveling?
You're right. It's FDR. A bearded tourist that's afraid of traveling. What is it?
A scaredy Chad.
I had a feeling it had something to do with you.
Yeah.
But I didn't know where. I was just going to say Chad, but that's not.
Right. Because in English we do say a scaredy cat. I figure Chad and cat are close enough where a scaredy Chad. So there you go.
I think they say scaredy cat, and I think that's untranslatable in another language too, or like as scared as a cat or something like that.
Probably. Most definitely. All right. Well, Jared, I think it's time to wrap up our episode today with a quote.
Okay.
And I guess I have kind of two things to say to wrap our episode up today. One, I think if you have a fear of traveling, you need to travel. Because I think anything in life that makes you a little uncomfortable, a little afraid, or a little excited, you have to do it. Mm-hmm. Right? I was having a great talk with our I think our first ever guest, Annabelle, right?
Nope.
Was she on before Jeff? Jeff was our first. So our second guest, Annabelle, we were talking and she kind of said something along the same lines where, if you're afraid of something, you need to go do it because it's something that your body is telling you it's past your comfort zone. And I think the beauty of traveling is being able to push out of your comfort zone. I've had so many instances here in the Czech Republic where I have definitely been way beyond my comfort zone, and I've learned a lot from it, and it's really worth it. And I think the second thing to wrap up the episode would be almost any fear you have about traveling can be solved and can be overcome.
Yeah. And you also got to remind yourself that many people before you have done these travels with the same fears, and 99% of them have turned out great.
Right. I think to really overcome your fears, arm yourself with resources and with knowledge. And as they say, knowledge is truly power.
Yeah, that's for sure. You can definitely limit your fears by being a good planner and just having everything sort of prepared. And not to say that you won't challenge yourself while you're there, but just knowing that you have a place to go. You're sure that you've contacted your bank and told them that you're going to be there, so you have access to money.
That's a big one. Mm-hmm.
You know what your phone plan is like. When I went to the Czech Republic, granted I wasn't nervous by any means, but like I had no idea what I was going to do with my phone, and I also didn't realize how quickly it became expensive if you don't get the right plan.
Right. And with that being said, I think even if your plans fall through or something happens, my biggest advice for all of our listeners out there is be calm. I know it can be stressful. I know it can be frustrating. You may want to scream. You may want to cry, but try your best to stay calm. Most of the time, that will really help you solve any potential problems you may have while traveling. So we would love to hear some of your travel fears and how you've overcome them, or if you want some help on overcoming them, let us know at untranslatablepodcast@gmail.com. Slide into our DMs, Untranslatable1 on Twitter, where you can also find our songs of the pod and all sorts of Jared's interesting and funny wit on Twitter.
You betcha.
And also check out our website, untranslatablepodcast.com. We have episode links up there on translatables, all sorts of cool stuff. So we know you will love it. And as usual, we just want to say how much we appreciate all of your support. Make sure to give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher if you have not yet. We would really, really appreciate it. That would be absolutely fantastic. Send us untranslatables if you have any. And as we say here at the Untranslatable Podcast, děkujeme.